welcome to this explainer. Just think about this for a second. You've got an internal engine that literally never, ever stops running from the moment you're a tiny embryo until the end of your life. Today, we're taking an architectural tour of the body's absolute most vital engine room. We're going to shift scales from its very embryonic formation all the way up to the macroscopic physics of blood flow. So we'll look closely at the biological foundation of the cardiovascular system, moving from how the heart and vessels are initially built, right down to the molecular triggers that cause a single heartbeat, and then finally back out to the physical forces that govern how your blood is actually pumped. All right, here's our agenda for today. Number 1, building the embryonic heart. Number 2, the architecture of blood vessels. 3, calcium as the cellular trigger. 4, the molecular engine. And 5, hemodynamics and pumping physics. Okay, let's dive right in. Section 1, building the embryonic heart, from mesoderm to a beating tube. Let's start at the very beginning, tracing the cardiovascular system straight from conception to see exactly how this incredible organ first takes shape. It's absolutely wild how early the heart forms. The timeline is just a biological marvel. By just the 3rd week of gestation, early cardiac progenitors in the mesoderm begin migrating to the midline. I mean, think about how early that is. It's before almost any other major body structure is even recognizable. Then by week 4 or 5, they form a linear heart tube. And here's the truly staggering part. This simple tube, made of just a single layer of endocardium and a single layer of cardiomyocytes, spontaneously starts to beat. This tiny, beating tube then rapidly undergoes asymmetric looping and growth to create the presumptive atria and ventricles. Astonishingly, by just 8 weeks, your heart was nearly fully formed. When you look at early embryonic development, you first have the primary heart field at the cardiac crescent stage, where bilateral regions fuse to form that initial straight heart tube. But then comes the complex folding and asymmetric looping that really defines the mature heart. So why does it loop like this? Well, actually, it's a matter of physical space constraints. The top and bottom ends of the heart tube are relatively fixed in place. So as the tube elongates by rapidly adding new cells, it physically has nowhere to go but to bend, fold, and loop over itself, usually falling to the right. This physical twisting is exactly what sets up the normal, complex relationship between our atria and ventricles. Section 2, architecture of blood vessels, the body's plumbing system. Now that we've got a heart, let's zoom in on the exact architecture of the vessels that actually transport all that blood. Blood vessels participate in the function of virtually every single organ system. And whether we're talking about massive arteries or tiny veins, they all share a beautifully engineered common ultrastructure. You can kind of think of them like a highly advanced reinforced pipe. It's a trilaminar or 3-layered structure. You have an inner intima, which is like the non-stick lining of the pipe. Then there's a middle tunica media, serving as the muscular pressure-controlling layer. And finally, there's an outer adventitia, which is this tough, fibrous casing holding the whole shebang together. But this isn't just passive plumbing, right? It's a dynamic, living system that relies on a very strict cellular division of labor. The intima is made up of a monolayer of endothelial cells. These cells act as the interface between the blood and your tissues, and they have a massive job. They're the reason your blood doesn't instantly clot as it flows. They provide a totally essential antithrombotic surface. Beneath them, in the media, are the smooth muscle cells. These are your mechanical workers. They're constantly making microscopic adjustments, tightening and relaxing. Like when you suddenly stand up from a chair, these are the cells that instantly contract to maintain your blood pressure so you don't pass out. They also secrete the extracellular matrix, which dictates the structural integrity and stiffness of your arteries throughout your entire life. Moving to Section 3, calcium, the cellular trigger, igniting the contraction. Let's peel back another layer to see what actually triggers those smooth muscle cells and cardiomyocytes to contract in the first place. The main mechanism for contraction is a beautifully orchestrated chemical cascade. It's kind of like lighting a match next to a powder keg. It starts when the cell membrane depolarizes. This voltage change opens L-type calcium channels, causing a super localized tiny influx of calcium into the cell. We call these little bursts calcium sparks. Now, this initial spark, the match, isn't nearly enough to cause a full muscle contraction on its own. Instead, it acts as a trigger. It tells the sarcoplasmic reticulum, which is the cell's internal storage vault, the powder keg, to unleash a massive secondary wave of stored calcium right into the cytoplasm. That resulting flood of intracellular calcium is what truly ignites the full contraction. Section 4, the molecular engine, actomyosin cross-bridge cycling. We're zooming in even closer now, right down to the biochemical level, to understand the true molecular engine of the heart and its vessels. So how does a muscle actually shorten? It seems like a simple enough concept, but at the microscopic level, how does a muscle physically pull itself together to generate force and pump blood? While looking at the sliding filament model, you've got these thick, rod-like myosin molecules, and they have these little projecting globular heads. These myosin heads form literal, physical bridges to the thin actin filaments positioned right beside them. When the muscle activates, the actin filaments are propelled along the myosin, pulling the edges of the structure, called the Z-lines, toward one another. The most counterintuitive takeaway here is that the muscle itself shortens, but the filaments themselves never actually change length. No way. They merely slide past each other to create more overlap. This microscopic rowing motion is known as cross-bridge cycling, and it's a strict four-step process. It's fueled by the splitting of ATP, the fundamental energy currency of your cells, and it's completely regulated by the presence of that calcium flood we just talked about. This precise chemical cycle is happening millions and millions of times a second across the heart muscle just to produce one single heartbeat. Let's walk through exactly how those four steps work. First, the hydrolysis of ATP transfers chemical energy to the myosin head, cocking it back and energizing it. Second, when calcium is present, the myosin head binds to actin, forming an active complex. Third, the products of the ATP breakdown dissociate from the crossbridge, which mechanically shifts the orientation of the myosin head. This is the actual physical rowing motion that does the mechanical work of muscle contraction. Finally, a new molecule of ATP binds to the complex, which breaks the bridge, allowing the muscle to relax and reset. Actually, as a fascinating if slightly morbid side note, this final step is exactly why rigor mortis happens after death. Without new ATP being produced, the myosin heads get permanently stuck to the actin, locking the muscles rigidly in place. Section 5, Hemodynamics, Pumping Physics. Finally, we're going to zoom all the way back out to the macroscopic level to look at the physics governing how the whole ventricle operates as a pump. To understand how the heart regulates its output, we have to look at the physical loads placed upon it. The crucial distinction here is between preload and afterload. Preload is the length of the muscle fiber right at the onset of contraction. Think of it like pulling back a rubber band before snapping it. The more blood that fills the ventricle, the more the heart muscle is stretched, setting it up for a stronger contraction. Afterload, on the other hand, is the tension the ventricular wall has to develop during ejection to actually push that blood out. Imagine trying to push open a really heavy door while someone else is leaning against the other side. That's afterload. According to Laplace's law, this resistance is dictated by the pressure in your aorta and the size of the ventricle. It's literally the physical pushback the heart has to fight against to get the blood out. Now, the amount of blood the heart ejects with each individual beat is called the stroke volume, and it relies entirely on a delicate, dynamic balance of three things. First, preload. Pulling that rubber band further back increases stroke volume because the muscle is stretched to a more optimal length. Second, afterload. This is where things get critical. If afterload goes up, say someone has chronic high blood pressure, that resistance opposes the heart's shortening. Because it's harder to push that door open, stroke volume actually falls unless the heart compensates. And that brings us to the third determinant, myocardial contractility. This is the inherent dialed-in strength of the muscle fibers. If you have high blood pressure, your heart has to ramp up its contractility just to maintain a normal stroke volume. Over time, that constant extra work thickens and tires out the heart muscle, showing exactly how these physics directly dictate human health. So how does the heart flawlessly balance this intricate biology and physics 100,000 times a day without us ever having to even think about it? As we wrap up this explainer, just consider the astounding reality of what we've covered. Right at this exact moment, your heart is continuously calculating these biological and physical variables. It's managing structures that grew when you were just a 3-week-old embryo, regulating trilaminar vessel walls, releasing microscopic calcium sparks, cycling millions of myosin cross bridges fueled by ATP, and perfectly balancing preload and afterload to keep you alive. The next time you feel your pulse, remember the sheer scale of the engineering happening in your chest right now. It truly is the ultimate engine of life.